busy. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to rhyme. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys, Miss Liz in the house, and I have the incredible Dr. Ron Stotts in the house with me, and we're going to spill his tea today, and his tea is creating conscious leaders. That's right, that we don't serve a beverage in this house, we serve words and storytelling. That's how we do it. But before we get started, I'm just going to stick Ron in the back, and we're going to do a disclaimer and a little intro, and then we're going to get Ron back in here, and we're going to spill some tea together. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All guest viewers and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or check out my link tree. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time with Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where awareness meets growth and conversation invites us to lead from within. Today's guest brings us into a deeper understanding of leadership, not from titles or positions, but from presence, intentions, and self-awareness. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ron Stotts, a leader, coach, and guide in conscious leadership and personal transformation. Dr. Ron's work focuses on helping individuals and organizations move beyond surface level success and step into a more aligned, mindful, and purposeful way of leading. Through decades of experience, he teaches that true leadership begins intentionally in how we think, how we respond, and how we show up for ourselves and others. His approach invites us to slow down, to become aware of our patterns, and to lead with clarity, compassion, and intentions. So grab your cup and lean in. Today's Tea Time is about conscious leadership, personal growth, and the courage to lead from the inside out. Let me get Dr. Ron in here and let's spill some tea together. Welcome, Dr. Ron.
Hi. I seem to have gotten off the show somehow, and I'm not. Oh, there I am.
No, that's okay. I put you in the back. I usually have you in the back until I open up, and then I get you back in here. But that's okay. We got to see you first, and then we put you in the back, and then we brought you back up in front.
All right. Thank you very much.
So, Dr. Ron, let's start off with who were you as a little guy and who are you now as a grown man?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, a little guy. I was very outdoors oriented. I was raised in the Northwest, so any moments I could spend outside in the woods playing or on the water or in the water or any variation of it with boating and that sort of thing. That was my adventure. I was a very, very good student, and my expertise was sitting in the back and looking out the window. And, so it was just, I was a boy. I was a boy just who liked to play and have adventures. And that's really who I was. And, I going through the Marine Corps, I realized that was the greatest mistake of my life, but it turned out to be the transition I needed to looking more inwardly and to becoming who I am today. That inward journey that I realized that I needed to adapt and adopt to, and really became my way of life because it was so fascinating. It was so rewarding and so rich with experience, information, and that's became, that's who I became, and that's how I help others.
So we're going to dig deep into your tea today. We're going to start off with the tea, and then we got some questions that are coming into the studio that I want to get out to you, Dr. Ron. So let's talk about this, creating conscious leaders. Why'd you give me that for your tea?
Well, a lot of people look very successful on the outside while feeling pressure on the inside. And there's a quiet exhaustion that just doesn't quite match their results. And that really is just an indicator. It simply means that it's time to increase your capacity of your nervous system so that you can deal with the increased requirements of your evolving leadership. And that looks like what? Deepening your relational maturity, aligning your leadership with meaningful contribution often makes a big difference. Stabilizing into a more evolved leadership, I should say. And identifying, a lot of times they're in push and effort and control, and that needs to transition into presence and trust.
Absolutely. Well, we have a question that came in here that I just want to get out to you, and it is amazing insight. How do we start becoming more conscious daily?
I think the first question you want to ask yourself is, when you're under pressure, do you contract or expand? And quite literally, just become aware of that and make that become an artist at noticing not only when and how you contract or when you expand, but why. Beginning to look deeper and deeper. Whatever is coming into our life, whether it's a feeling of an emotion or an incident that's challenging or even a delightful experience, they're all just indicators. They're all just indicators that help us evolve. They help us to breathe and remember to breathe and to look deeper. So when a challenge comes up, rather than contracting, or when you're a leader and you have issues coming up, if you're contracting, then you're shutting off, you're avoiding. You literally, neurologically, you're disconnecting from your higher level thinking. So you really have to learn to shift into becoming, rather than contracting, increasing your capacity of your nervous system and really, expand. And that's the journey of life, is breathing and letting go, breathing and becoming.
Just taking that time to breathe, right? It helps a lot. What's one simple step to heal past patterns?
Well, again, I'll keep it simple in terms of noticing when you're not breathing, noticing when you're, and I use breathing because it's always there for us. It's just a core part of who we are. Our life starts with a breath and ends with a lack of breath. And, so it's how you breathe in between determines your level of self-awareness, your level of consciousness, which determines how you see, experience, and respond to everything that comes into your life. And so it's really a matter of, letting yourself be present with what is, with where you are, with what you are. And that, when you contract, when you stop breathing and contract, when you feel too much pressure and you you find yourself shutting down or feeling stress, those aren't bad things. Those are just indicators that you're ready to look deeper and heal whatever is in the way so that you can expand into the level of life and leadership that you're capable of.
This is one thing we've never really talked about with leadership, is the breathing, taking the conscious moment to just pause and take that breath.
Yeah.
So what got you into that, Dr. Ron?
I was in pretty bad shape after the Marine Corps. Pretty bad shape means I was suicidal and a mess. And I really desperately needed some help. And I was teaching college at the time, and I moved to a little beach town, Laguna Beach, and my neighbor was definitely a a strange looking guy, very much into meditation and yoga and all these different alien things to me at the time. And he, in talking to him one day, he shared about a friend of his that helped people. And so he introduced me, and that fellow introduced me to breathing, and breathing became really what I use as my indicator in life as to how I'm doing. It's just that simplest reference. If I'm meditating, am I breathing? I can regulate my level of consciousness with my breathing. If I'm feeling stress, if I'm feeling out of sorts, if I catch myself contracting, then I know I'm not breathing. And so it just becomes, I'm a sailor, and on the forward sail, we have these little threads. They're called telltales. And those indicate to us whether I need to go up in the wind or fall off of the wind a little bit more. And they allow me just to make micro, corrections to really optimize the direction and the speed and everything that I'm going in. The breath is the same thing for all of us. It's really that initial indicator that tells us, oh, I need to look deeper, I need to breathe, I need to relax, I need to center my nervous system. And, and if you can't, well, then that's time to begin to shift old patterns. The very strategies that we used growing up to protect ourselves become the very thing that sabotages our life as we get older, in an adult phase. And so it's not that they weren't really useful when we were a child, it's just that they're not useful any longer. So we need to adopt new strategies. Rather than contract and hide, we need to breathe and expand into, so that we access the higher levels of consciousness that allow us to see what our next optimal step is and be able to take that. If we are sitting in, so many people start their leadership as, maybe they got 7 people that they're working with, and they're really their capacity is quite comfortable with that. But, you go through 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all of a sudden, now they have 2,000 people they're working with, or they've got much, much greater responsibility and all. And so all of a sudden that capacity isn't enough any longer. They feel that inner pressure. They feel that they're shutting down to protect themselves. And, that's just an indicator that you're ready to evolve. We're not, it's like the lobster. The lobster, they can live for many, many hundreds of years, I think. And, but the truth is that every year they feel this kind of niggle and itch inside, and they know that it's time to shed their old shell so that they can grow a new, larger shell so that they can evolve into it. And if they don't do that, they'll die. And humans are very much the same. They really need to be willing to let go and grow so that they can continue to evolve and experience who and what they're truly capable of creating in their life. If you're not happy with your life, that's fine. That's just your indicator that you're ready to evolve.
I love that you put the sailboat in there and the lobster. So that tells me that you like the water.
There was a giveaway there, wasn't it?
You kind of put them together, right? But I like that the analogy of the sailboat, right? The sails, putting the sails up and expanding and opening your mind to the sea, kind of like that. I'm a big philosopher, so I understand where you were coming from with the sailboat and that, and the lobster, how we have to expand ourselves, and change and grow and all of that good stuff. We have a couple more questions that are coming in that I'd like to get out to you, but we had a question that came in about the Marine Corps, and it said, how did your Marine Corps experience shape your philosophy?
I went in at 19. I was a rowing champion, so I went in, I was in really good shape. we literally were U.S. rowing champions, the crew. And so a lot of things that were challenging for others weren't really a problem for me. I know initially they would try and control us by having to do exercise, but they quickly realized, well, this guy's not, he can do that all day long. So, it was really a matter of, I was doing well, but one day on the rifle range, I was laying down. I was quite a ways out from the target. And, I was used to targets popping up with the bullseye target on them. And for me, it was just another sporting event. It really was. And, physical fitness and heidi-ho. But that one morning, they threw up a silhouette of a human being. And in my little 19-year-old mind, I realized in an instant, this is not a sporting event. What I'm really becoming good at is killing human beings. And it was in that moment that my whole body shifted its commitment to, rather than going to Vietnam and doing all the terrible things that were happening over there, I realized that I needed to get a very clear sense of who I was, what my values are, what was important to me. I'd simply been following, my father. He had gone into World War II, and so had so many other people. And so it just seemed like a natural next step initially. But lo and behold, it wasn't at all a natural next step for me. It was a wake-up call that I have a whole different path in life that I need to discover and enjoy.
And sometimes that's what we do, right? We follow the patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Father went to war, son goes to war, grandson goes to war. We just keep those patterns going on until we really look within ourselves, and then we say, oh, this pattern needs to be broken. We have another question here for you, Dr. Ron, and it is, how can someone begin the journey into conscious leadership?
Either by very deep desire for more, or deep fear that things aren't working and they're not going to work. Unfortunately, we're usually driven by our fear more than we are by our desire. And that's okay. It really is. It's just a matter of appreciating that everything you've done to get to where you are has been perfect. It really has. It's what you've needed to go through. There were lessons you needed to learn. There were aspects of yourself that you needed to rediscover. All those challenges are perfect. But at some point, a child wants unconditional love more than anything else. And so they give away parts of themselves. They hide away parts of themselves so they can maximize the amount of love they can get from their mom, their dad, their family, and eventually others. And so, at some point, they need more. They need more of themselves. And so they need to go on that hero's journey, that heroine's journey, and really look deep within to access, to heal and access the parts that they've left behind, so that they can now become whole, so that they can now become the confident, authentic person that they know they can be. And that inner journey, that hero's journey, is the adventure of your lifetime. And it can be a lifetime of adventure. But it's really, it's not a matter of you're broken or there's something wrong. It's a matter of that you just are on a journey, and you need to keep breathing and letting go, breathing and becoming. And, the hardest and scariest things are just part of our journey. Those are not things that are meant to hold you back. Those are the things that you can explore and heal. And those are the things that will allow you to catapult forward in your life, to become the person, the empowered person that you're meant to be. We have to go through a transition. We grow up looking for love, that unconditional love that we want more than anything else outside of ourselves. But in truth, the only place we're ever going to find that is within ourselves. And so at some point, we need to shift and begin that inner journey. And that's the key, really, to creating that inspired life that you feel worthy of.
Well, it goes back to the sailboat, right? It's that inner journey, that sail alone. You might have like 30 people on a sailboat. I don't know how many people can fit on a sailboat. I've never been on one, maybe one day. But you have 30 people on the boat, and each one is having their own journey within that sail. You know, as we sail across the water, each one will see something different. Will experience something different. Some will get seasick. Some will not. Some will see the journey further in the water. We'll see islands. It'll start to, you know, each journey is different. And that's why I love having these open conversations with guests like you, Dr. Ron, because it shows different types of leadership. It's not just the big boss in the chair that leads the room. You know, there's so much different types of leaderships out there. We have a question here about fulfillment. How do you shift from success to true fulfillment?
Well, you're not giving up success. As a matter of fact, once you really begin to shift and become more self-aware, emotionally intelligent, more conscious, success follows quite naturally. So yeah, I mean, I work with very high-level leaders, and they come in, a lot of them are definitely the old top-down style leader, but they're struggling. They're been focused on, you know, challenges and strategy problems rather than inner operating system problems, which is really what's going on. And you know, when you're under pressure, they're contracting rather than expanding, and of course, you know, that's not working for them. So basically, I mean, I've been doing this a very long time, and I can guarantee you there's 50 years of leadership research in addition to my own experience that very clearly shows that by really becoming more self-aware and emotionally intelligent, you become more compassionate and caring for yourself, and that is mirrored in your relationships with others. All of a sudden, people start feeling safer. You start creating more cooperative and collaborative organizations, and those organizations become much more, you know, successful. They become more productive. They become more profitable. So if you really want to, you know, if you're in business to make money, the more conscious a leader you are, not only will you be leading with more ease, but you'll be making more money, not only in yourself, but the organization and everyone involved. So yeah, they go hand in hand. If not, you don't have to make a choice.
Can anyone become a conscious leader, or is it learned over time?
Well, I think anybody can become a conscious leader. We're all capable of. There isn't anything that I'm talking about that somebody wouldn't be capable of arriving at, but it does take time. It takes a commitment. I mean, it's taken you time to get to where you are. And, you know, some of those patterns, programming really aren't supportive for you. So it takes time to let go of those. It takes time to adapt and adopt new habits, new patterns. You know, most people, I mean, I would say it's safe to say with the people I work with, their definition of control is one of, you know, they're up in their left logical brain, and, you know, if something comes up that's difficult, they contract down, and you know, by the time they recognize that's not working is when they come to me, because they recognize something has to change. And what has to change is just the self-awareness is you becoming more aware of your own patterns, recognizing the ones that work or don't work, you recognizing what's driving your life and recognizing why that's driving your life, so that you can go, oh, well, gee, I understand why the little girl or little boy wanted to do that, and that was a good choice back then, but that no longer serves me. And so you're shifting. You know, so many leaders are looking, as I mentioned, you know, at changing strategies. Well, it's really, you need to change that inner operating system, and that involves quite literally neurologically rewiring the brain so that you see opportunity where you would have seen challenge before. Yeah, so it's really, can we all do it? Absolutely. Will we all do it? Well,
well, that's a choice.
It is. It's not uncommon for me to have to use the phrase with people that I'm initially working with, just right in the beginning. Generally, you know, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make them drink. I can guide them into where they need to become more self-aware, but they need to choose to breathe and go on that journey.
Well, kind of comes into this question that just came in. How important is self-awareness in leadership growth?
Well, if you're going to lead a happy, successful, fulfilling life, it's completely important. That's the most important thing. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, your self-awareness, your consciousness, self-awareness are, somewhat directly related, and quite your consciousness, the definition of that is really how aware you are of what you're thinking, what you're emotionally feeling, what your state of being is at any given time. How am I doing? And but that state of consciousness, that level of consciousness you're in, will literally determine how I see, experience, and react or respond to whatever's come into my life. So if I'm in a lower state of consciousness, then I'm going to see everything as a challenge, a fear, a threat, and so I'm going to contract. If I'm in a high state of consciousness, then I'm going to see the opportunity within everything. I'm going to recognize that everything that comes into my life, is perfectly designed to support me in my growth and where I'm going with my life. And so I'm going to come into life from a place of trust and gratitude rather than fear and withdrawal and contraction. Does that make sense?
That does. Absolutely. 100%. Dr. Ron, we have a question here about trauma. Can past trauma block leadership potential?
I missed the one word. Can past traumas do what?
Block leadership potential.
Oh, it does it all the time. That's exactly what the initial part of my work is helping people understand what those blocks are. And they're all childhood traumas. They really are. They're old patterns, programs, incidences. A child doesn't, they don't know how to deal with emotions. That, so many times something will come up in our childhood where we just don't know what to do with those feelings and those situations. And so we push them down into that inner cave and store them in there and protect that doorway and make sure not only it doesn't open, but nobody else even knows the doorway is there, because if they know, then there's something wrong with us. And of course, we all have that inner cave. And it's really, the journey is one, and it's a delightful experience of really rediscovering that inner cave, opening that door and really taking a look at what's in there so that you can understand yourself. And understanding yourself, you can heal yourself. And in healing yourself, you can become who you truly are. And doing that allows you to create the inspired life that you're meant to be living. And that really only takes a couple of months. It's not oh my God, this is going to be a terrible
10-year journey.
Really, you jump in and you get wet, and most people, they find in a very short time that it's very exciting, because the scariest thing is you're going to learn more about yourself, and you're doing it in a safe, supportive environment. So it's like, oh, well, this is kind of fun, because now I understand why I do what I do and what I need to do, and I'm confident that I can shift that. So all of a sudden life becomes this adventure rather than this difficult challenge that we have to go through.
Well, Dr. Ron, I'm going to pull up your books. If you want to talk a little bit about these books, because I want people to look into these books, because they're about leadership and success. So let's talk a little bit about the books that I brought up on the screen. Which one did you write first? And tell us a little bit about each one.
Well, I wrote Overscheduled by Success. It's a guide for influential leaders that are just too busy to create their next dream. And I actually wrote it for a friend of mine, a very, very successful person who's made literally, probably billions of dollars with publishing his books. But I remember he was talking about, I heard him several times talking about, boy, there's this book I really want to write. And there's this thing I really want to focus on. But he kept just kind of, he was kind of like the band who has a bunch of hits when they're young, but they quit writing music. And so they're still, 40 years later, they're still playing those same tunes. And it's like, I wrote the book so he could understand why he wasn't going after his new dream, why he wasn't able to trust and let go and let the success that he's had continue to work, but also let go and create this new direction, discover what that had to offer. So yeah, the book explains all of how that works, why it works, what your options are, has all the tools in it. So it's a great book for people who are ready to make a shift in their life to look over, because it gives them a map, it gives them a foundation. The transformational leadership book is really, so many times we just don't understand. It's like I've taken a lot of martial arts, and so you learned, there's the all the different colored belts that you can get, and it's like everybody, I want a black belt, and and leadership.
I want a blue belt. What stage is a blue belt?
Well, that's about the second level, and that's good. That's all right.
That's not too bad.
I found myself always wearing a white belt because I didn't want anybody to But transformational leadership really defines and gives you a map and shows you, these are the different levels of leadership. Those are really just different levels of consciousness, personal development. So, okay. So the more I understand about myself, the more I evolve, the higher level, more conscious leader that I'll become. And that's quite simply the case. So it's really just a quick, there's so many really thick books out there that describe all of that, but it's really more of a short, cliff notes so that people can get a map and feel comfortable with it. The third one, the ins and outs of mindfulness. Mindfulness is really, an incident comes up, you want to stop for a moment. You want to breathe. You want to observe what you're feeling, what's going on in the situation. You want to observe what your next best step is. And then you want to proceed. That's called the stop process. Stop, take a few breaths, observe your best next step, and proceed on that next step. And so the ins and outs of mindfulness is really the method. It's just a tool for doing that. Every week you get a new mindfulness exercise. There's a journaling, you're journaling every week also in terms of the growth that you're seeing, the insights that you've had, patterns that you recognize. And so I designed it originally for my more advanced students, but they kept giving it away to everybody else. So I thought, might as well give it to everybody else.
Follow the lead.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a marvelous tool to support people on their journey. That's really what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to highlight your books because they are important. And for anybody that would like to grab the books and all that, where could they get these books, Dr. Ron?
Well, they're all on Amazon. So that's the easiest way. Just jump on Amazon and pick it up. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk to you about, I did a little bit of homework on you, and I want to talk about this Japanese maple. When you had a talk with your two grandsons, what was this talk about?
Well, I'm actually sitting a few feet from that Japanese maple outside the door. Yeah, it's a dissectum, so it's a low Japanese maple, and I'm very big into gardening and Japanese gardens and maples and things, so I really am able to trim them once a year without really thinking about anything. And being a meditator, not surprisingly, I was in the middle of it, and I realized I hadn't had a thought in my mind for a very extended time. I was halfway done with the tree. But as I was coming just quietly back into a sense of awareness, I found myself having a conversation with my grandsons. And the conversation with them asking why I wasn't leaving the world in a better condition than I had found it, which is kind of my tendency in everything that I do. And I was in the middle of giving them this great story, which all of us knew was just BS.
The grandkids will always call us out on that.
I mean, unfortunately, they're quite smart. So, but
they are.
But in that moment, I realized, well, what is my highest intention? And my highest intention, not only for the boys, but my highest intention is to create a more conscious and caring world. And, so it's like, okay, well, so am I doing that? And, watching the world, I'm going, well, I'm not doing enough. So I began looking at, well, where could I make my greatest impact? My ability is to help people understand themselves, to take them into higher levels of consciousness, to really neurologically rewire their brain and transform their life. And I recognized in doing some research that high-level leaders, they really not only have a huge impact on their organization, but they have a huge impact and a lasting impact on a societal level. Yeah. And I thought, okay, and I'd worked with many, many high-level leaders by that time, but they certainly weren't my avatar or whatever the term is in terms of your perfect audience. And so that's when I made the shift to, okay, well, let's focus on those high-level leaders so that we can create the impact, that lasting impact of a more conscious and caring world that I'm focused on. Yeah.
Well, it all starts with us, right? The change. And those grandkids, we gotta leave a legacy, an example for them. We can't just be preaching at them. We gotta be the example as well. And that's what I do with my grandkids as well. Is this is why I do tea time, so that they can look back and see these conversations in 50 years and say, oh, grandma had a really good conversation here. We have some good information. Let's use it. We have a question here about the biggest mistake. What's the biggest mistake leaders make unconsciously?
The biggest one is they're looking outside. They're looking outside at all the challenges. They're looking outside for all the solutions. And, I do a discovery call, and that's really my first meeting with somebody usually. And inevitably, they're talking about all of the people problems and marketing problems and, all the outer things, business problems. And all the different things they've tried, pushing harder, trying harder, doing this, doing that. And, I congratulate them on that. But then I kind of quietly ask them, because I've usually seen a pattern by that time. That pattern is there's a resistance somewhere. There's something insight missing. And so I begin to ask them, they might be acknowledging that they don't feel like they're enough, or that they're pushing too hard, or that they're, I recognize, oh, they're really trying to people please, or they're too controlling, or whatever it might be, the pattern. And I kind of subtly ask them, well, how does that play out in your life? And they begin to recognize that, say it's a control pattern, they recognize, oh, yeah, I see that in various ways, in my family and my kids and at work, certainly. And I go, okay, well, how long's that been going on? And so they start to take a look at their life and, go back in time, and they always come up with a brilliant recognition that it started in childhood. And so they begin to recognize in that conversation, oh, those outer challenges, those outer issues, those outer solutions are really there. If I'm really looking I need to look within to find those. And it's really not an outer problem, it's an inner issue that with me that I need to change. Those people, those circumstances are really just the result of my leadership style and focus. And so as they heal that, of course, everything changes, not only within and for themselves, but within their organization. And certainly, it's always in their family first. That they never even talk about that when they come in, but it's the first thing they talk about is the healing and growth takes place, is that amazing connection they start having with their partner and their kids.
Well, and that's why I start off each tea time wondering how we were as little ones and how we are now, because it aligns with the way that we choose and live our lives today. Children that have been quiet a lot will become speakers. People that were in the back shadows, they'll become leaders. To be the opposite of what they were as a child, or they might be the similar. So there's a lot of connection with the childhood and the adulthood, and understanding the mind. how you want to change it as well and rewire it. And it all goes back to childhood trauma, because we all have childhood trauma of some sort.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know I had amazingly wonderful parents, and it only took me most of my life to recover from that.
Well, it's a life journey, right? It's that sailboat. Get on the sailboat and just sail that water. It takes a long time.
They seemed so wonderful, and they were, but there was all these things that were affecting me and holding me back so yeah, you just have to notice inside of yourself when pressure increases. You have to notice when you're contracting, expanding, and that's your pattern. What are you trying to control? If I didn't need approval, what would I choose? All of those questions are very, very important for you to be asking yourself. You need to learn to pause instead of pushing. That's really when awareness shows up. I would say the good news is that the moment you see that pattern, all of a sudden you're no longer at the effect of it. Your awareness has gotten to a place where you're recognizing those patterns, going, that's what I need to shift. That's what's holding me back, So, yeah.
So how can someone lead with purpose instead of just results?
How can they lead with purpose instead of what? Oh, instead of just going for results? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, I think if they lead with purpose, they're going to get better results. So I would change that paradigm considerably. But yeah, I think if you begin to recognize that you're really worried about what others think, if you're really trying to get acceptance and love, that means that's that little child inside, still trying to please, still trying to be enough, still trying to do the right thing so that it's accepted and loved. And if you're still caught in that, you're limiting yourself, you're limiting your organization, you're limiting your capabilities. It's just a matter of, are you willing to go on that inner journey? It's the hero's journey. It's the whole thing that Star Wars was written after. One of my mentors was Joseph Campbell, and Joseph Campbell was the creator of the hero's journey and all that that movie series was written about.
Well, I got some quick questions here for you, Dr. Ron. Just quick answers. Conscious leadership in one word.
Conscious leadership in one word?
I make it dig deep. She's like, one word?
Love.
Oh, why love? That's interesting.
In one word? No.
One word. One word conversations going on here.
By going on that inner journey, you begin to understand yourself, you become more self-aware, but you also begin to accept yourself. And in time, you begin to actually love yourself, appreciate and love yourself. And in time, you begin to recognize, that unconditional love that I've always wanted, that I've never been able to get from anybody else, turns out that I'm the only person that can give it to me. And so all of a sudden you find yourself really on this journey of discovering how to let yourself unconditionally love yourself. And that unconditional love leads you to a place of being more conscious, being more aware, taking better care of yourself, being more, empathetic, compassionate with yourself. And as I always say, it's our relationship with ourselves is mirrored in our relationships with others. So as you develop those tendencies within, and I see it with my clients, every time, it always is about them in the beginning, as it should be, and that's fine. But by the time they've graduated into, another level, they're really focused, well, how do I help others? How do I bring this into the lives of others so that they can enjoy their life more fully? And so, love is really, that's not a business sense, but or a business term, but it's really, that's what it's all about. The more you love and accept yourself, the more empowered you are, the more authentic you are, the better and more conscious leader you are, the more your leadership will be about empowering others so that they're bringing out the best in them, which results in the increased productivity and profits. And so, you know, you can always bring it back to that if you want. But you know,
I like that you use that word love, Dr. Ron, because you know so many people hear the word love and they think it's just all right. It's not. There's so much more to it. It's just like leadership. There's so many different branches of leadership and different types of leadership out there that we need to open those doors and avenues to. Success without fulfillment feels like what to you?
success and fulfillment feels like what? It feels like,
Success without fulfillment feels like
oh, success without fulfillment. Oh, that's just pressure and burnout and you know, all the things that I see every day in clients and potential clients. They, you know, they're living their life out of integrity with who they are. They're living their life really trying to prove themselves to others and to themselves. They're just not in alignment. They don't have that higher intention. They don't have what I really call your greatest aspiration, what you'd have to breathe into and to reach, so that you know their life just isn't in alignment. They're doing it for something, you know, maybe to make more money. And you know, I've had people in my office that, you know, there's billions and billions of dollars in the bank. I mean, or investments or whatever, you know, and they all get to the same place. They go, well, that wasn't it. It's like, no. Yeah. They all believe that if they had enough money and if they had enough stuff and, yeah, then they would be lovable and acceptable. And the truth is that didn't work. And that's when they come in and go, oops, what do I need to do? And that's when they learn to love and accept themselves, so they can become that leader who's conscious enough to not only take care of themselves, but those around them, so that they can increase their capability.
Dr. Ron, have you ever heard of hustling hoarding?
Say that again, please.
Hustling hoarding.
Hustling? No, I don't think so.
You know, where they hoarder themselves around materialistic stuff like cars and businesses and properties and stuff like that, because they want to fulfill themselves instead of loving themselves. So they hoard into the hustle.
Yeah. And I mean, I had an associate who worked with actually pretty wealthy people who were hoarders, and it was interesting to have her share with me that, you know, they might have 300 ties or what, you know, I mean, they've got their houses that are just so packed in, you can have literally, you've got a little aisleway you can walk down in between things. And, you know, for them to get rid of anything, you know, and that's always the first part of the journey for her and with her clients is, okay, let's just get rid of this one piece of paper, this one tie, this one t-shirt, this one everything. And it's the scariest thing in the world for them. It's life-threatening. Those things are what they insulate themselves with. Those things, as you shared, protect them and make them comfortable. And so getting rid of those things just seems antithetical. Why would I do that? You know, that's like people who come into me, they have these ways of trying to control their life because they want to be in control. And I appreciate wanting to be in control. But when I listen to how they do it, it sounds like the best definition for being out of control that they could have. You know, so it's just a matter of having them understand. And so as they begin to let go of things, as they become more aware of their patterns, same thing going on as we've been talking about, they get to a point finally where it's like, oh yeah, I can let go now. And that's true with the emotional backlog. That's true with, you know, the 300 ties. You know, and at that point, she's able to bring her team in, and they bring in a dumpster, and then they start letting everything go. And so hoarders, yeah, I mean, I had one, you know, living in Santa Barbara for many years, and the, you know, beautiful neighborhood right by the ocean, but there was an older fellow just on the next block over, and nice guy. I mean, I talked to him many times, but yeah, I mean, here he was had this gorgeous home, and even had a 6-inch wide pathway leading up to the front door, and I never went in, but I'm sure it was much the same in there. Yeah, but it's that needing to breathe, that needing to let go, that needing and recognizing that's how you become. You don't become yourself. You don't ever discover yourself. You never find that love that you want by contracting. You only find, you only and ever find what you're looking for in terms of success, in terms of love, in terms of happiness, by breathing and letting go and becoming what you're truly capable of.
Well, it's kind of like the sailboat, right? Wrapping those sails up and not opening up for the journey. It goes right back to your sailboat again. When I heard hustling, hoarding, I had a lot of questions about that, because a lot of millionaires and billionaires will do that. They'll hoarder themselves and people please and stuff like that. But then when you ask them if they love themselves, they're like, oh, well, I can get you a new car, and I can get you a new home, and I can get you this. Well, you're just continuing to people please, but you're not actually understanding that that person is asking if you truly love yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what the whole conversation is based on today, is the conscious leadership. Is how are you leading? Are you hustling or are you breathing? And a lot of us are not breathing when we're leading. And that's why I wanted to have you on today, Dr. Ron.
Yeah. I mean, I've traveled the world, and the one thing I've seen is the people having the least fun are the people with the most money. I remember I was on a beach in Thailand, and at one end of the beach were all the kids, literally they had huts that, just had bunks in them, and, they had their backpacks, and they just throw it on a piece, and I don't even know whether somebody charged them to be there. But, they were having fun. They were having a blast. And at the other end of the beach, quite a ways down, there was the wealthy people. And, of course, that was all walled off, and you couldn't go in there because that would be...
That's what I mean. They put walls up, right? They block you out. It's like they're in a box.
But I did happen to, probably intentionally, can't remember now, but I did find myself over on that beach exploring, and I was laying on the beach. And I mean, those people were just, you couldn't talk to anybody. That was just not socially acceptable. You couldn't, and they weren't having any fun. They were just kind of stiff. And having money doesn't have to look like that, but it often does. And so what you're really seeing is, if your goal is money rather than really creating that incredible life, then you're just hoarding money to protect yourself. It's the same thing.
Yeah. We have a question here. What advice would you give to a new leader starting out?
Focus on developing your inner capacity, because that inner capacity is your inner capacity is going to determine your next stage of life and leadership. That initiation work that I offer is all about increasing your capacity, so that when you're working with others, you're not hitting those internal ceilings. Usually that's when things stop working. We focus on increasing their internal capacity, not just external action, and it changes both results and how success actually feels. To me, success without inner alignment never feels like success. And I'm speaking for many, many very successful people who I've worked with. But when you change internally, results follow naturally. And it's time to recognize that your next level of your life requires a new relationship with yourself. Those old patterns that got you to where you are were great. No criticism. Applaud, congratulations on that. But now it's time for something new. And, that you have to have that new relationship with yourself, literally neurologically rewiring your brain so that you can access higher levels of thinking and increase your capacity, and to understand that success becomes a byproduct of who you are, not how hard you push.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
So, Dr. Ron, what kind of services do you offer for people?
I would say all of my services are about really helping leaders develop the inner capacity required for their next stage of life and leadership. And initially, that's helping them, in my Creating Your Inspired Life program, it's a couple of months. It's really about getting to become more self-aware. It really is. It's looking deeper within yourself, and I appreciate that it's scary, but it's also creates the foundation for whatever life you want to build. And if you don't have a strong enough foundation, then whatever you build is going to eventually collapse. And the next stage is really, it's a transformational journey into conscious leadership. It's a 9-month program that really allows you to take everything that you learned and begin to integrate it into your life and leadership. I often see people going from CFO or, some other C-suite level into the CEO level that they've wanted to. If somebody's in a CEO level, I often see them now becoming CEO of multiple organizations and increasing the success of those organizations. It's just a matter of, they're leading from a more conscious, enjoyable, less pressure place that allows everybody within the organization to uplift. I mean, my wife and I were walking in the park the other day, and there was some Canadian geese going by, and they were flying in that traditional V shape. And she was sharing how the group flying in that V shape will actually go 70 miles a day further than the single goose flying by himself. And that's really true for us as we become aligned within ourselves, as we become aligned with others, as we align our organization. Everything gets easier. Success just becomes a byproduct of that focus, of keeping that alignment, both within yourself and others and in your organization, in a healthy, supportive way.
So, Dr. Ron, do you have any events coming up or any new books that you're working on that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I've got a new book, actually. I hadn't even thought about that. I designed and put together a coaching book for somebody who really wants to become a transformational coach rather than just, helping people, move along. And it's got all of the tools that I've developed and used over the last 50 years. It's called A Deeper Look. And it's just going to share all of those tools. I seem to be bringing it into there's a AI, it's called Loving is AI, that we're going to be actually bringing all of those tools introduce them into that AI, so that when it's communicating with clients or members, that it's allowing them and supporting them into going deeper and having better insights and working through issues and becoming more conscious. So it's fun.
So when is that? When is that book coming out?
Oh, that's a great question.
He's like, I wasn't expecting this.
But that's been about 3 months. It's actually done. I just have to get off my tail and do it. I would say within a month. I would safely say in a month. I've got a program. It's called the Initiation Program, and that's my 3rd level program that I'm just bringing out. And that it's going to be an experiment. It really is. It's going to be for high level leaders who really want to increase their capacity. And so I do want to get that book out before that, and not that would be connected, but there's a target date. So
And your final message for all the listeners today?
Love yourself. If you ever wished you were more accepted and wanted to be enough and wanted to be loved, then start that inner journey. Breathe. Take a look at what's in the way of you accepting and loving yourself. And, it's the greatest adventure you'll ever go on. It really is. I mean, I've been married for, 36 years, and it's even within that context, it's like, what an amazing experience that is in my work. Just the people that I get to work with and the adventure that I'm on. It's just incredible. And it's not me. It's just the direction that I'm going. It's the adventure I'm on. And that's what I find for my clients. I mean, I see them time and time again. The adventure of their life just becomes magnified and enjoyable and thrilling, and they, are telling their friends, about coming in. You got to go see this guy.
Well, I'll be doing that. Everybody needs to go and check out Dr. Ron Stotts.
Yeah.
Dr. Ron, thank you for joining me today on Tea Time, and thank you for all the listeners and the questions that came in. I appreciate all you guys. I could not do this without all of you guys. We're just going to do a little wrap up of what today's tea time was, and then I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. with the second tea time of today. What a thoughtful and grounding conversation. Dr. Ron, thank you for reminding us that leadership is not something we do, it is something we become. You showed us that when we take the time to understand ourselves, we naturally begin to lead others with greater clarity and authenticity. This afternoon, we were reminded that awareness is the foundation of growth. When we slow down and pay attention to how we think, react, and connect, we open the doors to deeper transformation. To everyone listening, here is something to reflect on after this tea time. The way you lead others is a reflection of how you lead yourself. Until our next cup, share, keep choosing awareness, keep choosing growth, and keep showing up with intentions in all that you do. And I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. with the second tea time of today.